Will the real Philadelphia 76ers please stand up? I don't know what that is. I don't think any of us really do at this point, but we have a lot to discuss now that they have won, what is it, Kyle? 5 of their last 6?
4 out of 5.
4 of their last 5. 4 of their last 5.
Let's settle
down. Let's settle down now. Yeah, that's going a little bit too far there. But 4 of their last 5. And there's a lot of wondering of what this basketball team is now going to look like going forward. Will we see Joel Embiid a lot more? Who are the others that are going to be surrounding him outside of Paul George and Tyrese Maxey? While we've talked about the starting lineups a lot, we've also discussed the starting lineups quite a bit over these last few weeks because of who's been in, who's been out, what they have looked like when certain players have been on the floor, and having another glimpse of a longer glimpse too of Embiid, Maxey, and George on the floor on Sunday in their win over the Chicago Bulls. There were some other pieces around those 3 that really has you scratching your head as they 4 or 5 here. We're not getting ahead of ourselves, but if they're really going to stand up to who the best 5 is to start the game off, what might that look like? Welcome to the PHLY Sixers podcast on a Monday where we have 4 shows this week at 3 p.m. We haven't done these in a while.
Get used to this.
Been a lot of games as of late, so we haven't been able to hang out with you during this time, along with Derek Bodner, Kyle Newbeck. I'm Devon Gibbons. Bree is producing. All of you in the chat. Yes, Jeannie, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Val, Aaron, Sam, Gavini. We see you all in there. Great to have everybody in here. Presented by Bet365. Download the Bet365 app. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. But Kyle, now we're trying to look to more ordinary with this basketball team. Something that we can hold on to that are not losses, maybe some wins, and a 5-man lineup that will look familiar to us where there's not a changes to that group overall, especially when they start to win. We have a lot of on-off numbers of certain lineups because, quite frankly, Nick Nurse has had a ton of different lineups overall.
Too many,
with this
quite
group.
frankly.
So when we look at the starting 5, and I'm going to pull up how many different lineups they have had so far. But with that said, man, and looking at where we are right now, 4 or 5, really good win. Best Embiid performance of the season where he got off to that 0-for-6 start. But after that, he was lights out. He was aces. And with it, you saw Maxey play his best game. Paul George didn't have to do too much. Kelly Oubre, we're praising him for his role as a 4th man in that lineup. And then you look at Yabusele and Jared McCain, where it all falls. If we're looking at things today, right now, projecting out for you, and then what you think Nick Nurse would do, what would you prefer their starting 5 look like going forward? Healthy, of course.
Well, what I want to do is try to expedite the McCain and Maxey minutes, right? And so the way you do that is by starting Jared McCain in the backcourt with Maxey. And I think it's probably Kelly Oubre in the other spot right now. I do think against certain teams and in certain matchups, you're going to need more size. You're going to need potentially Yabusele to start. And I think Yabusele has certainly made a strong, coherent case to start and get opportunities of that magnitude. But for me, you have to begin from what is our goal right now? One is to win, right? So even if I want Jared McCain to start and it turns out that he doesn't, if they can win games in the short term, that's the most important thing. But you can't lose sight of what needs to be accomplished between now and the end of the season, or end of the regular season, I should say. And that one of the big things that you need to figure out over the next few months especially, but until, let's say, mid-April or so, is whether it is viable and sustainable to play Maxey and McCain together, but Maxey and McCain together while you're playing Paul George, while you're playing Joel Embiid, right? Because we've seen you in a game where there's no real pressure and it's Maxey and McCain against like the Brooklyn Nets. Yeah, those guys can play pretty well. They can put up a bunch of points. The question becomes, can you get away with that backcourt and can you get wins and win minutes against the Bostons of the world, the New Yorks of the world, Cleveland, I suppose, is in that conversation now with the way that they've started the year. And Cleveland has a smaller backcourt, so you would have some hope that maybe you have success against a team like that. Jared McCain had a great game individually against them. But this despite the fact that they have to win, and you might want to go with more proven options, right? In an Oubre, or if Caleb Martin was playing better, we'd throw him in there as well. And I do, in my heart of hearts, want the bigger switchable defenders, the athletes on the floor, as many of them as you can get between these guys. But given where Caleb is, given that Kelly has only recently stepped to the forefront, and a little bit of lingering skepticism about Yabu as a 4 within this configuration, I think Jared's got to be out there, because you have to try to figure this out now so that you don't get to March and April and all of a sudden it's like, well, this guy might have to start a playoff game and we haven't really looked at this lineup at all.
So real fast, 1 and 4 with those two as your starting backcourt, and during this run here, and they have had 13 different starting lineups for the season so far.
So spoiler, none of these starting lineups are going to have a good record, so that is not going to factor.
Actually, there's one: Maxey, Oubre, Drummond, Yabusele, and George. They're 2-1.
Oh, ooh.
2-0.
Throw a parade. No, I certainly agree with Kyle, and this is something we've talked about a lot on the show recently, that I would have Jared McCain in that starting lineup. I've been on that boat for weeks now, for a multitude of reasons. First of all, I just think he's been one of your 5 best, most consistent players ever since he was in that rotation. So I think you put your best players on the floor. I think it's best for his development, and I think it's best for evaluation, both evaluation of him individually, but also evaluation of him and Maxey as a backcourt. And I think if you were going to try to make that combination work, and this is something I said early on, if you're of the viewpoint that Jared McCain deserves more than 15 minutes per game, which I think clearly he deserves more than 15 minutes per game, then you're going to have to get time with him playing alongside of Tyrese Maxey. The best case to do that is to put him alongside of Paul George, Joel Embiid, and maybe another really athletic wing to try to mask those defensive deficiencies. So if you're going to try to make that pairing work of your two, I know Tyrese doesn't like being called this, of your 2 short by NBA caliber guards.
Small guards. It's okay to call them small guards. We can say that.
I think that is a lineup where you have the best chance of it working. So I think there's a whole bunch of reasons why Jared McCain should be starting. Now, if we're going to talk about what we think Nick Nurse is going to do, I think that's a different conversation, but that is where my head is at now. Now, with that 5th starter spot, I think there's a case for Yabusele because of the rebounding specifically, and because he's been a more dependable shooter than Kelly. I think that if you're making the case for him, that would be it. And quite frankly, both of those hold some merit to me. I'm not completely firm on this last spot, but I do think if you are going to, and this sort of ties into part of my reasoning with McCain, if you're going to hide Kelly Oubre's deficiencies while also taking advantage of his strengths, putting him alongside Joel Embiid, Paul George, and then 2 elite shooters on the perimeter is the way that you would do that. And I think Paul George at this stage of his career doesn't want to be defending the top scorer, the top wing scoring option for the entirety of his time on the floor. Kelly is, I think, more equipped to do that than Yabusele is. So I think there is certainly, and if you're going to look at the numbers on these, and the numbers are completely worthless because none of these 5-man groups have played more than 22 possessions together. Don't read much into it, but that is the one that has had the best combination of 2-way success. And I think there's some reasoning for that. Specifically because Kelly right now is playing maybe the best basketball we've seen him play, certainly this year, but possibly even during his time in Philadelphia. He's on a real nice stretch here. I might lean towards McCain and Oubre in that starting lineup, but I do think there is a very strong and very real argument for Yabusele. And quite frankly, if Caleb Martin ever fixes his 14 different ailments and learns how to shoot the basketball again, there's an argument for him as well. So if we're sitting here...
I'm not super bullish on that happening, unfortunately.
No, and he's got to, at this point, to regain that starting spot, he's got to show that he can overcome whatever is causing him to shoot in the mid-20s or whatever he's shooting from three-point range.
I sent him to Rothman, no worries.
But I think if you look at his career, he is of that caliber where he can be into the conversation too. But I think, like I said, McCain for me is definitely in. And then I think there is a reason for Oubre. I do worry a little bit about the rebounding. But I think right now, and I think I'm a little surprised to be saying this, I might lean Oubre.
So looking at James Alexander in the chat, James says that we need our starting 5 to stay healthy. And that's what this conversation is based on. If they're going to be right, if they're going to make their push and get their record corrected, you need a healthy starting 5. So as we're talking about this, of course, with Joel Embiid being as healthy as possible, Paul George, the same thing. we're looking at Maxey, we know he's in, and then it is Jared McCain and Kelly Oubre. Now, we were very strong on the fact that it was, before we knew Jared McCain was going to be this good, that it was Caleb Martin and Kelly Oubre. But things have changed where it is now the conversation of Kelly Oubre and then Yabusele because of how well he has played, plus because of what is going on with Caleb Martin and the injury, with the shooting, and unknown of what that is with him, that it has to be Kelly Oubre right now for me with Jared McCain. And the shooting in particular, number one, for the defense, I'll start with the defense like we discussed during our watch along yesterday. When Kelly Oubre was getting that start, and we were discussing it during the pregame of why is he getting the start over McCain? Well, to have that extra, as you just talked about, Derek, have that extra defender out there with Paul George on the perimeter to help out to take that main offensive threat opposite them. Kelly Oubre is that one right now. It's not to say that Caleb Martin can't do it. It's just more of whatever the ailments are on the opposite end with the offense, you still need, as frustrating as Kelly Oubre can be, he is as healthy as possible. That's one thing you don't have to worry about is his health. Now, you can question the shooting, his shot decisions, and some of the turnovers that he may have. And even defensively, you can question some things, as we referenced the Charlotte game where we went back to the Brandon Miller losing him when he had it going on. What is happening here? Well, that was Kelly Oubre. But what you also saw was the good Kelly Oubre these last two games against Orlando and against the Chicago Bulls, where this may be a fluid thing where one is playing really good one week and one is playing pretty good the next week, where Nick Nurse decides to shuffle them in and out for that very reason, where you may have the staples of the four, as we like to joke around and call the big four with Jared McCain.
I'm not
McCain
joking.
2024, that's right. That he is firmly in there. And then you have Yabusele and Oubre. But let's just go back to also what we talked about in the preseason, where we discussed it may be situational. It may be based on who the opponent is that you decide to go Yabusele or over Oubre because of who it might be.
Just be based on how everyone's playing. Like if Kelly hits a huge slump, you might insert Yabusele. It might not be a fixed starting lineup 100%.
Right. Yeah. You have that five. You have a week where one is terrible, one is pretty good, and then you go in that direction. So for there, though, the defense of Kelly Oubre helping out Paul George on the perimeter, because as much as we may praise Maxey and McCain for some of the things that they do, they're still being hunted. And you have two good wing defenders out there in George and Oubre. And then with the shooting for Jared McCain on the other end, you're spacing the floor now with all three of those all-stars out there, and you're going to get some really good looks for Jared McCain. And shooters shoot, and they have slumps. But shooters shoot, and they also shoot out of those slumps. And he's going to hit a big shot like he has had in his short career, where we're going to say, remember that game against Cleveland in February where that guy knocked down two big three-pointers in the fourth quarter against one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference? That's why he is in there. That's why he might be in the closing lineup, and that's why he's certainly in the starting lineup. So I would absolutely agree with you both that I would lean Oubre and Martin and McCain right now. But
I was going to say,
not Martin. And McCain right now.
Curveball.
But you definitely can see Nick Nurse going in the direction of who's having a good week, who's in the slump, and let me make my adjustments here against this opponent also and go with a different lineup or a different starter here for this particular group.
So you know what's funny about, and I 100% agree that there are concerns to worry about with Maxey and McCain defensively, right? A short-term, long-term, whatever. The funniest part of it so far is that their lineup splits, they've actually been better defensively than they've been on offense.
Oh, yeah, by far. They're zero. If you look at all the lineups with Embiid, George, and Maxey, they're in the 0th percentile offensively and 100th defensively.
So Maxey and McCain, they're like 37th percentile offensively and 70th on defense, which is like, again, the lesson here is not that, that's going to work because they're defending well and that the offense is going to come. The lesson is that small sample sizes tell you funny things. For example, Maxey, McCain, Oubre, George, and Embiid, 22 possessions together. What do you think their plus or minus is per 100 possessions?
That's a long pause there,
62.6 points per 100 possessions.
Were you anywhere near that?
They're essentially scoring 141 points per 100 and conceding 78. So championship is what that's saying. No.
Yeah.
math or
Dumars
lineup numbers
man.
tell you funny things in very small samples,
Yes.
right? If I found a specific Kyle Lowry lineup, it's probably the number that Nick Nurse is looking at, like, oh, see, I told you.
Well, he's been a +8 2 games in a row and 11
-5
minutes.
last game.
Oh, was
by
he?
the way.
Okay.
Yes, he was.
No, I look, and lineup numbers for the most part at this point are completely meaningless.
Yes.
And really, until you get to legitimately like close to 1,000 possessions, it's tough to read anything into it whatsoever. Usually what they should be used as is, all right, here's a starting point to describe what has happened. Now let me dive into the details and try to figure out why that has happened. That is a much different conversation. Like I said, the Embiid, Paul George, Maxey lineups, which you would expect to be great offensively, have been almost unplayable from a numbers standpoint. But they have absolutely killed teams defensively, and because of that, they are in the huge positives. It doesn't really mean anything. We all have our expectations of what those three will do together. And I certainly think you saw them generate quality shots the other night. A lot of these offensive numbers aren't going to matter if nobody makes a shot. I was joking around before the show. Kelly Oubre is actually like 3rd or 4th in terms of 3-point percentage right now on the Sixers.
Which is insane.
The only ones ahead of him, Reggie Jackson and KJ Martin are both technically ahead of him, but they have 25 and 14 attempts.
Don't count.
I'm not going to count those.
Yeah.
The only ones ahead of him are Guerschon Yabusele, Jared McCain, and Kyle Lowry. Legitimately, Paul George,
I
Tyrese
barely
Maxey.
count Lowry either.
Lowry only has he has actually 51 attempts. So he is a decent, because like in the beginning of the season, that's all he did. Remember, he started off 15 for 23.
He was like 60% over the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, he was 15 for 23. He is now 18 for 51. So he has legitimately made just 3 of his last 28 3-point attempts. And he's still the Sixers' 3rd best 3-point shooter on the season, which tells you everything you need to know. But, you know, a lot of these players below that, even Caleb Martin, if he gets a shoulder fix, that's a big if. Paul George, Tyrese Maxey, you expect them to eventually make shots. And when they do that, that offensive numbers, offensive efficiency will skyrocket.
Would have never guessed that 20 games into the season that we're looking at Tyrese Maxey shooting 30% from 3-pointer on 9 attempts a game. Would not have expected that
Not
at
even
all.
29.3%.
29% from the 3-point line.
Yeah, he was 3 for 12 on Sunday.
Yep.
So that
One of his better shooting performances of the season.
I don't think
I'm
that's
mostly kidding, but
I would hope you're all the way
math
kidding, because the
is
math
25%.
doesn't work
I
out on
know.
that one.
Not when he was like, would you say 3 for 23 in that 3-game
3
stretch?
for 26, I think it
26,
was. Yeah.
3 for 21 for Jared McCain in 3 games before that. When we come back, let's make a case for Guerschon Yabusele, though, a little bit more of why he
Maybe
potentially be in
KJ
that.
Martin.
Or KJ Martin as well. Saw one of those in the chat where KJ should be the starting 4 alongside those other guys. We'll do that when we get back right here on a Monday, a 3 p.m. show. No basketball until Friday. So you got us Monday through Thursday right here at 3 p.m. on the PHLY Sixers podcast presented by Bet365. And that's where we begin. Bet365. We had a pretty good day yesterday with our same game parlay in the Sixers win over the Bulls, where we had Joel Embiid over the 33.5 combined assists, points, and rebounds, and Zach LaVine in the losing effort, getting more than 21.5. That was a pretty easy one, and we made that pregame because we were right there on Bet365. It was very easy to navigate on the app. If you have not done so yet, and maybe you want to jump in, only one basketball game tonight. That's New York and Toronto, but there is a big Monday Night Football game as well. And if you want to jump in and place a wager on either one of those 2 games and those 2 sports, Bet365 is the place for you to go. If you have not already, right now, download the Bet365 app. New customers can get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5 using the promo code PHLY365 to sign up. Deposit $10 and place a bet for $5 to get $150 in bonus bets. And those bonus bets can be used on the spread, totals, player props, futures, and more. So if you're still feeling pretty good about your rookie guard, maybe winning that Rookie of the Year award, you do so at Bet365. Maybe if you're not feeling all that great about your running back for your football team, winning MVP, Offensive Player of the Year in the National Football League. You do that, all that, again, Bet365. Download the Bet365 app. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up to get $150 in bonus bets when you sign up, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 plus and physically located in Pennsylvania. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Also want to tell you about our good friends from Rothman Orthopedics. We just talked about, jokingly, if Caleb Martin for the Sixers could potentially get that corrected whatever the issue is with the shoulder. He has already had a shoulder and a back injury. The guy's been playing some tough basketball in a really tough situation where they're losing games, but he's out there and he's fighting. And if they are looking for an extra doctor or extra place for him to get checked out, sometimes they do want that second opinion. Rothman Orthopedics is the place to go because they do, in fact, check with the hip, knee, shoulder, spine and shoulder and elbow, spine, foot and ankle, hand and wrist, sports medicine, physical medicine, and rehabilitation, orthopedic oncology, and trauma and fracture care as well. Rothman's 200-plus fellowship-trained physician subspecialize in all of these areas of the body and a multitude of orthopedic services that I just laid out there for you. Rothman proudly serves dozens of communities across Pennsylvania and New Jersey, with 30-plus convenient offices, urgent cares, and walk-in centers. And we know right around this time, sometimes you might just want to get a regular checkup because you get a little sick, you got to walk into an urgent care. They have it for you. You get a little banged up playing some pickup basketball, maybe some pickup pop-a shot in the office, and you sprain a little wrist. I don't know. But you want to walk into that center and not have to worry about too much. And Rothman Orthopedics has you covered. And for more than 50 years, Rothman has participated in thousands of groundbreaking research and clinical trials with the goal of advancing knowledge, developing treatments, and improving outcomes for the benefit of their patients. Rothman Orthopedics, they specialize in orthopedics and you. Visit rothmanortho.com/PHLY to learn more and make an appointment today. All right, welcome back to the PHLY Sixers show on a Monday presented by Bet365. I'm not going to give any wagers tonight. That's for game nights. It's not a game night.
Oh, Gambling Gibbons is so odd. He's like, hey, you got to subscribe to my separate Discord in order to get the premium picks for Bet365.
That's right. But we'll
the
have
Discord
you covered.
that'll never post then.
That's right. Maybe.
He's posted.
I posted. I jumped in there. I peeked in there a little bit. I was called upon earlier in the week to check in.
I'm gonna count how many messages you've sent in our 14 months.
Over under 5, Kyle.
Oh, under.
Might be over, but like only slightly.
Might be slightly over.
1, 2, 3, 4. It's exactly 5.
Wow.
Exactly.
Look at that.
Bet365.
Right on.
Bet365. We're on it.
Download that app and jump on in there. All right, Derek. If you had to bet that Guerschon Yabusele would get more starts than Jared McCain, where would you go there? And why would that be? Because of his play. What is it that you like about him in the starting 5?
Well, so the first part of that question is what I think Nick Nurse will do. I would say that, yeah, he will end the season with more starts than Jared McCain.
By the way, he has one more than Jared McCain. McCain is at 8. Yabusele is at 9.
Yeah. But McCain mostly has started when other players have been out. It feels like Guerschon has a better chance of being in that starting lineup when everyone is healthy. Again, that isn't what I would do. That's what I'm predicting Nick Nurse will do. Mm-hmm. But there's also like what Nick Nurse is leaning towards now could change drastically in a month and a half, 2 months. There's still a lot of season left. And like I said, I think McCain has been one of the more consistent players, which you shouldn't be able to say about a 20-year-old rookie. But I think he has been. That's in large part a credit to him, a little part condemnation on the inconsistency of pretty much everybody else on the roster. But, I do worry a little bit about McCain hitting a rookie wall at some point, which a lot of times just comes down to the fact that, in college they play 30, 35 games. It's just there's a lot more minutes to be played at this level. It's not even really about the level of competition. It's just how much basketball they're playing. So I worry about that, and that could impact Nick's decision to start him down the stretch as well. So I will go Guerschon on that. But like I said, that's as much a prediction on what Nick will do, not what I would do. In terms of what I like about Yabusele, there's the rebounding, which of the 3 options we're talking about here, he is the best. There's the shooting, which compared to like Kelly and Caleb, he has been significantly more consistent at. And then there's just the quick decision, the ball movement, the connective passing, which he has been good at as well. And those 3 are very compelling for me. If he was a little more reliable in terms of being able to defend, I think I've been impressed with how well he moves on the perimeter given his body type, but it's not like I want to throw him at Zach LaVine every possession kind of movement. And I think that is really the significant advantage that Kelly Oubre has.
Real fast, you said the rebounding. Where would you put the rebounding discrepancy there between Yabusele and Oubre without looking at the numbers?
Not as high as you would want. He probably doesn't rebound as much.
5.6 to 5.3.
Now, give me the per possession, though.
Yeah, well.
Per possession, it's not all that close, I don't think. I think Yabusele per 36 is at like 8.3. Oubre at 6. So you're talking a couple rebounds worth of difference. And I think that tracks, right? Like Kelly has been in a good spot as a rebounder recently. And if he were to continue the type of play we've seen recently, then that makes sense. But you also have to consider too, Yabusele's been playing out of position and playing center. So how do you weigh that as
I actually think that might hurt him a little bit because he pursues blocks a lot more than he does when he's playing power forward.
Yes. So I think you could argue that his rebounding numbers will continue to go up as he plays as a true front court guy.
Plus, we've also seen him boxing out to allow those team rebounds to happen.
So there's a lot that goes into it, right? We can look at rebounding numbers individually, but I tend to look more at the lineup stuff and think of how they work in tandem. And that's part of why, like, if you wanted to argue Yabusele, Oubre as the two other guys, I think just Nick Nurse has talked a lot about team size. Yabusele, with his limitations as a switch defender, as Derek's talking about, you don't want him on, the big quick guards or even like the quicker wings for sure. He's better than your expectations. That doesn't mean that he's good or high level relative to like the type of 3s and 4s you need to defend around the league. So if you want to have him in the lineup, you could make the argument that you almost have to play Kelly Oubre, or maybe not Kelly Oubre, but someone like a Kelly Oubre, Caleb Martin, whoever it might be, whoever's in the run of form at any given time. I think those are all important considerations. One of the things that Yabusele brings, and if you wanted to go Yabu and Jared, for example, one of the reasons primarily that I would argue for that's not shooting is the secondary playmaking, right? Like Jared's ability to run the offense. Yabusele as a screener and short roll guy. Now, he's not going to do a lot of short roll stuff with Joel Embiid on the floor, right? The staple plays are going to be Joel at the elbow, pick and rolls, him and Maxey, and that's how you run the offense. But Yabu, if he gets the ball in the corner and someone actually closes out, he beats a closeout, and then he can make quick drop-off pass or a swing pass out to the perimeter, hit the guy in the weak side corner or cutting from the opposite dunker spot, whatever it might be. He tends to facilitate quick ball movement and is a pretty active player, right? Despite the fact that he does not look like a guy who'd be moving all around the floor. I do think he is deliberate and is intelligent with his floor spots and his floor spacing, where even if it's just, shuffling into a spot in the corner, finding yourself in the dunker spot, timing his cuts in that way, he's been very useful for this team there. So I think the extra, or I trust him more to make those plays on a game-to-game, play-to-play basis than Kelly. Now, if Kelly plays the way he has recently, Kelly's been good at all that stuff. I think he's moved the ball more. We've seen him be an impactful cutter throughout his tenure, especially when he's able to play off of Joel Embiid and leverage the doubles and things playing off of him. So I just like the consistent passing that I think you get from Yabusele on top of all the other stuff.
The IQ is unquestioned when you watch him play. And we've seen enough games now, 22 games in, where you can see where he has the goods. He's smart out there on the floor, and that's why it works out with them overall together with how he plays. And speaking of the Jared McCain piece of the shot creation as part of his advantage, for all that we talked about from the draft to summer league to then training camp preseason, and while we heard good things about him in training camp and then watching him in preseason, for him to be at where he is right now as a playmaker as well as the shooter that we already thought he could be, and having all of that combined right now, this early in his career, that really stands out for him, and which is why partly you have him as that other starter there outside of the shooting. But you're looking at a fourth playmaker on a team where if things get bogged down a little bit with Maxey, Embiid, and George, Derek, that we've seen enough now. We feel comfortable with him getting his shot, getting to where he wants to get to. Like we would always see, how in the world is T.J. McConnell going to get there? Well, he knows how to get to his spot for that 15-foot pull-up jumper on the right side of the floor, or that free throw line extended. And Jared McCain knows how to do the exact same thing, where he plays within himself. He knows exactly who he is, and he doesn't try to get away from that.
Yeah. And going back to Kyle's point, like I value a lot quick, consistent decision making. It doesn't have to be the most creative in the world. It doesn't have to be throwing no-look bounce passes or threading needles, but making that quick decision to get the ball from station to station. There is nothing that bogs down an offense than somebody, whether that's Joel Embiid or Paul George or Tyrese Maxey, forcing a double team, forcing a rotation, kicking it out, and then a hesitation, a lack of a decision making, a bad decision even. That is, if you want to get teams to feel comfortable double teaming your stars and selling out to get the ball out of their hands, put a lot of slow or bad decision makers around them, or players who just want to jab step and ISO. I am not thinking of anyone, especially not someone who had the number 12. That is an easy way to bog down an offense and make it real easy to double team your stars. And certainly, and again, I'm almost surprised to say this, Yabusele, given how much uncertainty there was over his perimeter shot and how he would be able to fit alongside of a big like Joel Embiid, I think he is unquestionably, of the ones that we're talking about here, the best decision maker, the most consistent decision maker, and the quickest decision maker out of these options. And I think that is a not insignificant part. Like there's never, I think some people are like, well, you have enough ball handling and shot creation in McCain and Paul George and Embiid. You can have someone like Kelly who's only an off-ball player. And certainly I think the off-ball aspect of Kelly can be accentuated in that lineup.
Yeah.
But I do think if he goes back to some of the habits, and again, last night he did not, and I give him a lot of credit for that. But if he goes back to some of those habits where he wants to get the ball and survey his options and try to ISO, that is I don't want to say a tough fit, but that certainly negates some of the advantages that your stars are creating.
And I will say it's part of the reason why, and some of this is he's hurt and hasn't played well, but some of those reasons you're describing are why I would lean Kelly over Caleb, because Caleb this year has been the biggest culprit with the record scratches and the worst one of the whole season was the ball swinging to him in the corner. I don't remember who they were playing.
When he looked down at his feet.
Was it Houston? And he looked directly down at his feet as if like, oh, I need to figure out where my feet are behind the 3-point line. And it was like, Caleb, buddy, I respect the hell out of the fact that you're playing through injuries and like trying to give it your best. But you got to know where your feet are, man.
Your foot on the line drives me insane. So I get wanting to correct that, but you can't do that by looking down at your feet and giving the defense 3 more seconds to close out on you.
So, yeah, the speed at which he has played offensively has not been up to par most of this year. I think that's reflected in a lot of the numbers that you see. And while I think Kelly is inconsistent in that department, I think he's certainly well ahead of Caleb there.
Yeah.
And I think absolutely recently he's been excellent there. Like we talked on post game yesterday about that one possession where Joel was trapped. Kelly flashes to the middle of the floor, gets that short jumper off, just doing things like that, just repeating those things. And otherwise promoting good spacing, cycling the ball around the floor. So if Kelly starts on current form, absolutely no problem with that. I think he has earned it. I just don't want it to come at the cost of Jared getting buried, because here's something that I was looking into overnight and this morning before we did the show. Jared McCain's minutes dropped a good amount when Kyle Lowry returned to this lineup. And that should not necessarily be connected in any way, right? But if you just go back through, I believe it's the last 4 games, the only game he played over 30 minutes of the last 4 was the back-to-back that Lowry sat against the Magic. The other ones are in the 20s. And while I don't want Jared McCain playing 40 minutes, because I agree with what Derek brought up about the rookie wall and the amount of games you play, those minutes add up, and there will be a point where he's got dead legs and he's got to probably try to play through that. He certainly should be at or around 30 minutes minimum for this team right now. He has earned the right to have that type of role. And so I'd like to just get him out with the starters.
Did you see that video that the Sixers put out yesterday where he was trying
They're going to talk about the TikTok he made in the locker room.
Not that one. It was more, first I was going to go with the skipping where Tyrese was waiting for him and they put the arm around the shoulder and he tried to skip in and Tyrese was like, nah, let's just run into the locker room. That was pretty funny. But the TikTok video that he tried to make in the locker room with KJ Martin playing there in the background, joking around with him, trying to keep up with the dance. He just couldn't, Did
you see the one he did with Lowry in the background? And Lowry had like the biggest old man moment. Like, what are you doing? Yeah, you could just see in his face, like him going like, maybe I'm too old for this.
That would be me being in a TikTok right there. Well, that's where I do relate to Kyle Lowry quite a bit.
Well, my daughter, she keeps trying to get me. I think she has one out there that I did appear in.
Okay.
made an appearance, kind of like our our Discord. Yeah, make an appearance. And then don't go back in there for a while on the TikToks. All right, we mentioned KJ
It's
Martin.
gonna be banned in mid-January anyway. So
yeah. Where we talked about KJ Martin, and Kyle wants to maybe make a case for KJ Martin and that potential starting 5. So we'll talk about him as another candidate. He has played so well that not just Kyle, but some in the chat as well feel the same way. We'll tell you about KJ Martin, what he has looked like as of late, and how he might factor into that starting group as well, right here on the PHLY Sixers podcast presented by Bet365.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, there have been a lot of choose chill moments with the Philadelphia 76ers so far. Hopefully we're all so chilled out right now. 4-1 in their last 5 games. Stars have been on the floor together. Everything's coming up Millhouse right now. Hopefully you don't have to even go out of your way to choose chill. Hopefully you are chill. But if you do need to calm down because the Eagles are stressing you out, because the holiday season is here and you got to get gifts and everything's kind of up in the air. Don't worry. You can always take a step back and then reach for an ice cold Coors Light. And with Coors Light, you're getting an ice cold beer. The mountains turn blue on the bottles and cans right as they hit that perfect temperature. The holiday season is a pretty stressful time, guys, right? You're running all over the place. You got a bunch of different events. It doesn't matter what holiday you're celebrating, quite frankly. You want to do the best you can for your friends, your family, your loved ones. You're stretched thin. There are all types of events you're going to, or office Christmas parties, Secret Santas. There's just too many things going on. You can't keep track of it all. But you can always choose chill, take a deep breath, and then enjoy a cold layered, cold filtered, cold packaged Coors Light that has a smooth finish and bring mountain cold refreshment with you, whether you're outside in the cold during the holiday season or by the fire opening some gifts, hanging out with your family. When you choose to rise above it all, choose chill and choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/PHLY basketball. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado.
We also want to tell you about Glatt Hair Restoration. My other 2 colleagues are cowards and cover up the top of their heads, but I am sitting here showing you
not always
what
Beanie
I
gang.
don't have.
It's cold
Anyone
outside.
can buy
It's
equipment
raining,
and
man.
say they do hair restoration. Only Glatt Hair Restoration by Morgenstern Medical offers decades of proven results using an innovative approach and delivered by leaders in the industry. Glatt Hair can help during all stages of hair loss with leading-edge treatments for prevention and restorations, including laser, light therapy, non-invasive TED treatments, vitamin supplementation, topical and oral medications, PRP and stem cell restoration, and hair restoration surgery. Each patient receives a complimentary one-on-one consultation to pinpoint the best course of treatment. Caring patient advocates work with you from the first phone call to the last follow-up visit. They understand that this decision can be emotional and challenging, and they're here to help make your experience simple and stress-free. Glatt Hair isn't just about restoration. It's about innovation. Their breakthrough treatments really do dramatically change lives. Change your hair, change your life. Bald is now optional. If you want to improve how you look and how you feel about yourself, Glatt Hair has the right treatment for you. Regain your confidence. Visit glatthairmctr.com or call 610-980-4000 to get started.
Welcome back to the PHLY Sixers podcast presented by Bet365. I have to tell you, Kyle, that Mary Overfield says Louis needs a TikTok, Kyle.
And I said no screens for Louis. We're a no screen for the children household.
As much as Devon is like the anti-social media one, if any of us were going to be successful on TikTok, it would absolutely be Devon.
Why do you say that?
It just seems like you would be able to express your personality the most. I don't know. I feel like I would just like talk seriously about topics, and that's not what TikTok's about.
All right. Well,
I don't aspire to be a TikToker.
I don't.
Neither do I. Yeah.
Not really my.
Yeah, that's not my thing. I mean,
but I feel like if any of us were going to do like the dances, it's clearly you.
Oh, it's clearly Bree.
Oh yeah, but you can do things other than dance.
No,
on
but
TikTok.
like that's what
that
really
just happens to be Jared McCain's
thing.
brand. So,
but it seems like all of the things that are TikTok adjacent in terms of being successful or at least promoted on the platform. I don't know. I just
you
feel
can
like
also
Devon
just
would have
share
that.
a lot of misinformation.
That's true.
On TikTok.
Well, that's what social media is for.
Yeah. Well, Bree says no. She's not. She's not doing the TikToks. Bree says no. We did find some of the videos though. Let's go with the KJ Martin one. Let's see if Derek can do this. that KJ Martin.
Oh, we're pulling these up. Oh boy.
Yeah. So listen, Money Mars says they said Devon got the McCain dances. Oh, really? I was unaware of that. I don't know. And nobody knows my daughter's name either, so they can't find out where it is. You guys know, but yeah,
no doxing on
no
PHLY
doxing
Sixers.
on the PHLY. So, Derek, I think you could do so Bo tries to get Zach to do Bo and Fran try to get him to do. Let's see if Derek can do this particular.
Oh, there's no chance.
This one, I've lost.
I didn't even know what he was doing
here.
I didn't even know what was happening. What is that? I don't know. It's a thing though. Bree, what is this?
That's just the running man. And
is that
thank you, Kyle
Lowry? Right
yeah, that's me right there.
So what is KJ Martin doing there in the back? All right. So Derek, you couldn't do that? That looks easy.
Physically, I probably could. Would I ever be like anybody?
The rhythm for it? Yeah, that's a different story.
No, it's more like would I be like? Would anybody ever want to watch this? No,
Yes.
Nobody would ever want to watch that.
Everybody in the chat would want to see you do that. I know for
0% chance
they would want to see you do that.
0.
All right. I don't even know what it was. Bree, she didn't tell us what it was.
Here's a related question. How many dances that have a name attached to them do you think you could do? Or have been able to do it at one point in your life?
Of these current ones? Or
no,
just
like, so for example, I used to know how to do the Dougie because Teach Me How to Dougie came out when I was like in college, and that was a big thing. The Running Man's an easy one.
That's easy.
Flossing is, I'm not going to do that on here, but that generally, if a bunch of 8-year-olds can do it, that you can figure that one out.
Right.
I learned how to, we did a foxtrot at my wedding, which that's for old people, but learned how to do that for like the first dance type of deal.
Yeah, right. I mean, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All the wedding type of
cha-cha slide.
Yeah, you could do that. Macarena.
K-Reb said Macarena was my only one.
That's what Martin said. The swag surf.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't even really count that because you're just mostly.
Yeah, you're just rocking back and forth to that one with a little hand movement in there as well. Derek, you could do that. Don't worry about that. You could definitely do that. But yeah, I could do a decent amount of those. And my daughters, I have daughters, so they would, Dad, let's do, you don't say no, so you just do it. And
Martian said I only know how to do the Douglas, not the Dougie.
So yeah, and now I'm getting VG violations Greg from the Anthony Gargano show saying, Devon, what are we doing to TikTok? I'm not doing a TikTok, so that's not happening. But you can go and catch Jared McCain doing all his TikToks. He's pretty popular over there. KJ Martin was in that video, Kyle. He's had a pretty good run here where many would like to see him continue to get some pretty good minutes there in that starting lineup as well. Closing lineups, he's done pretty good there. He had that 20 spot in the game that they had the other day. He had 20, Paul George 21. He's looked really good, man. And what would the case be for him in the starting group of where he would work, rebounding, basketball IQ? He's a non-shooter, but he does a lot of things to impact winning.
Well, did you guys know that the player with the biggest positive differential by stepping on the floor for the Sixers is KJ Martin?
How many games has he played? He's played in
most of them. I think 19 out of 22.
He's at about 350 minutes. So I don't know how many possessions that would be. But offense is way better when he's on the floor, which that to me is a little surprising based on what we know about him, especially because the defensive numbers are basically neutral. And I think that's the thing that early on in the season really leaped out. But I do think you can see, if we're talking about quick decision making, I said it yesterday, the thing with KJ is even though he's not taking threes at the rate that I think we all want him to, at the very least, he's deciding not to take it and driving quickly, right? Like he's attacking the closeout and going to the rim, and he's getting into positions as quickly as can be, right? Getting to the dunker spot, cutting out of the corner, whatever. So he's facilitating good offense in that way. And then I think you could argue he's been their best defender this year based on being available more than some of the other guys, and also just the pure versatility he's shown in switching across matchups, being a weak side rim protector, helper as the low man, all the stuff that you need to be a good defender he has shown. And on top of that, generally they have rebounded much better with him on the floor. It hasn't always meant he's rebounding, but their offensive rebounds go way up when he's out there. And some of that is KJ going up for putbacks. Some of it is teams have to be so concerned with following him as he's crashing the glass that opportunities open up for other guys, right? And so I think based on current run of form, he's probably been one of their 5 best players. And so I don't think it's that crazy of an argument to
Not
make.
at all. Not at all.
I think it's more, do you value developing McCain? Do you value the consistent shooting or the more consistent shooting you get from Yabusele, like picking and choosing there? But I don't think it would be crazy at all right now to say, hey, KJ's playing great. He brings some needed skills, mostly the ability to rebound and the defensive stuff to the lineup. I think it'd be perfectly reasonable to not to say, hey, he's in the starting lineup and then that's just the rest of the year, right? But give him some opportunities. And Nurse has done that situationally. But with the big boys, it'd be interesting to see exactly how often he's able to take advantage of the space they would provide for him.
He's done just as much, if not more, to warrant that type of discussion for him, like everyone else, for the role that he has played and what he has done, especially as of late. Those possessions that he had against Franz Wagner. Franz Wagner is Franz Wagner, all-star season before this injury occurred. But for him to play the way that he did defensively, manning up, no help, man up with him. And he had already had it going. And this is in the fourth quarter where he's had some real important possessions against him in that fourth quarter on that win over the Magic on Friday. And he was really good, if not the best. I mean, we saw some really good possessions from Martin and Oubre, but for Martin to stand up the way that he did to Franz Wagner in that win, I mean, if he can continue to do that and you see that value, you see that worth with the ability to do multiple things out there on the floor. Because of the lack of shooting, you need all that other stuff, and he does that other stuff.
Yeah, and even with the lack of shooting, look, he's not shooting a lot, but he took 9 threes over a 4-game stretch, which this is a guy who took 28 3-pointers all of last year. He took like one 3-pointer in the first like 8 or 9 games of the season. He had 1 attempt. So is he shooting enough? No. Is he shooting more? Yes. And I think that is pretty key in, his development. And look, he's not like a kid, but he clearly has this thing he has to get past in terms of trusting his shot. I think he's showing the first steps towards possibly doing that. And I do agree he's one of their more versatile defenders. And just in terms of whether it's on ball, off ball, being able to match up against different kinds of offensive players, being able to provide some weak side protection, and the effort being always there. He has been one of their more consistent, more versatile defenders this year, possibly their best. So would I start him? No, in part because I like that versatility coming off of the bench. I think the lack of shooting can be more exposed, and the lack of willingness can be more exposed to start the game when you're going up against the other team's best units. Mm-hmm. So I would like to keep him in the role where he is off the bench, in part because you just have so many other, like we have a couple other 2 very legitimate options there for that final spot. I would still keep KJ off the bench, but I am really intrigued by the progress he has made. And also, quite frankly, this isn't the topic of the show. There's a chance he's not here in mid-February. And so if you're talking about developing a starter, certainly McCain is more likely to be a long-term fixture. Even Kelly, because he has that extra year on his contract, is more likely to be here past the deadline. So that would factor in as well.
Well, I will say he may not be a kid, but he's only turns 24 in January. So he's been in the league for a while, but comparatively, he's pretty young compared to Kelly and Caleb and these other guys who are 4 and 5 years older than him in some cases. I mean, certainly compared to the Gordons and Lowrys of the world, but we're certainly not throwing them in starting conversation. So the tough part with KJ has been trying not to evaluate him too hard on the right now, but also not dinging him for his priors as we watch him play more effectively and show like real signs of growth, right? Like what you don't want to do trying to evaluate players is get so stuck on, well, here's the body of work, and that's all that person can be forever, right? But you also don't want to swing too far the other way and say, well, KJ Martin's played 5 to 10 good games, and now he has turned a corner and he's a completely different player than he's always been. So it's trying to navigate that and stay in this middle ground to some degree where I'm optimistic about him. I think he's shown quite a bit, and I think he's finally consistently taking advantage of those athletic tools. But again, he's only played 19 games in one season, and even within that, he's only probably played 10 where it's been like, yeah, KJ Martin was very good in that game. So it's a wait and see for me, and I tend to agree with Derek that I think I like the athleticism, the versatility, and frankly, some of the concerns that he has more in a more specialized role coming off of the bench.
Who do you prefer him on the floor with, though? If he's not starting, but he does come into the game, is it next to Yabusele maybe playing the 5? Is it Embiid playing that 5? Because remember, pregame yesterday, while Yabusele got the start and McCain did not, one of the names that we did talk about, you mentioned him, would have been interesting to see KJ Martin in that 4 role next to Embiid to start the game off against that Chicago Bulls squad yesterday. So do you have a preference of who you do like around him because of his skill set offensively?
Well, so the interesting thing is I don't like him next to Drummond, right? And so
that
becomes more of a bench construction issue, right? Where I think Andre has played reasonably well as of late. Like, the team hasn't necessarily performed all that great with him on the floor, but I don't think that's been Andre's fault. I think Andre's played decently well and has looked closer to the guy we expected coming into the season. But I think there's been almost no question that the minutes with Yabusele on the floor have been more productive, even if he is playing out of position. And yes, I would prefer someone like KJ next to him, especially because Nurse has played ultra small a lot of the time with Yabusele, where you're amplifying the concerns, right? It's one thing to play a smaller guy at center. It's another to play Yabusele and Maxey and McCain and Eric Gordon.
Yes.
It's like you have to put some semblance of size and athleticism out there. Paul George helps in that department. So if you get Yabu and KJ, Paul George in there with the bench guys, maybe one of the small guards, and then you have to figure out who's that 5th guy. If it's Caleb, if it's Kelly, depends on how the sub patterns go. But you can see the outlines of a productive rotation for sure.
Derek, that rotation, if Embiid, Maxey, and George are your 3, of course you put Yabusele, Oubre as 5. Not saying that they are the starters, but who are your 6 through 10, 6 through 9, 6 through 10? If we're, of course, cementing the 3 All-Stars.
Yep.
Yabusele 4, Kelly Oubre 5, McCain 6. Where else do you go from there?
Yeah, I mean, certainly McCain is in 6 there. I think Caleb, as much as he's struggled, and look, I think Caleb, it is painful at times to watch him try to play basketball offensively. He is too important for the team in the short term and the long term, and he is too good defensively to completely bury. Now, if you're going to tell me, like, there is belief that if you give him time off, he might get better, and I don't know that. Like, a lot of injuries you just can't fix with even a week or 2 weeks, 3 weeks off. It might just be something where he needs an off season. Who knows exactly what's going on? He won't even really, he speaks in riddles when he's talking about what he's going through. But you don't know that a couple of weeks off will actually fix anything. But if he is at the point where he is playing, then he's going to be in my rotation, I guess is what I am eventually getting at. And obviously Andre Drummond because, well, matchup dependent, Andre Drummond is in that rotation for sure.
But KJ is firm?
KJ, I would say, is firm in that rotation
so
as well. Yeah,
that's 8. So Andre Drummond is 9.
Is 9th. And that depends a little bit. Like if it's a matchup where you can get away with, maybe you think a small ball option of stretch 5 is your best option, then you put Yabusele as the backup. If not, Andre Drummond is going to have to play against some of these matchups. And quite frankly, he's been playing significantly better here over the last week or 2. So I would continue riding that and see if he is found what works.
And the 10 that rounds out, because there's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it, is Kyle Lowry rounds out 10 because Nick Nurse is the coach.
No.
Right? I mean, look,
look, he be? Yes, I expect he will.
That's what I'm saying. So that's the 10. They are firm with that 10 right now. Ricky will get some sprinkles in there from time to time. And
you missed this in the Discord today, Devon. That so yesterday, as we were talking about Lowry and our issues with him, and can't believe that Nurse continues to play him as he just plays through struggles. I went back. I was like, "Hey, Derek, did you see this?" There's a comment on yesterday's post-game show. It was like, "It seems like y'all are afraid to talk about Lowry," and I was like, "What?" Derek was taking grief for how much he complained about Lowry. I've said send him to the moon. Like I like Kyle Lowry a lot as a person and for his career, but he should not be getting minutes. But all of us are a little bit resigned to our fate here, watching Lowry suit up for the Sixers.
I just don't get it.
It's really strange, man. Well, it's not strange because I understand why they have the long history together. And I think as recently as the spring, the problem was not that Lowry couldn't play. It's that he was playing too many minutes. Now the issue is I don't think he can play.
No.
Or at least he has not shown consistently that he can play right now. This is a different problem. I actually think my expectation of Lowry last year was what we're seeing right now.
Right.
And I thought he was a really pleasant surprise for what he brought to the table and his ability to scale up. And I'm not seeing that this year. So I don't know what the reason for that is, if there is anything beyond just the age. And he did have the hip issue, right?
Yep.
So coming back from injuries when you're in your late 30s, that's tougher than when you're younger. It's always tough to come back from injuries. So that goes without saying. But he just hasn't been good enough. So he should not have this type of role on this team.
The numbers over his last 10 games where he has played 21 minutes per game, he is averaging 2.4 points in 21 minutes, shooting 19.4% from the field and 11.5% from three-point range. He's getting 21 minutes. And again, I don't blame Lowry at all. He's almost 39 years old. It's not normal to be able to play NBA basketball at 39 years old. He's probably getting the most out of what he has left because he's a very smart person and a smart basketball player. I blame Nick Nurse for putting a guy who can't move on the floor for 21 minutes per night.
Well, and I also blame Nick Nurse for not simply playing Jared McCain more, right?
Yes.
If Kyle Lowry getting 12 minutes comes at the expense of 12 minutes for Jared McCain on a night where he's only playing 21 minutes, that's absurd, right? Like, if you want to say we're playing Lowry when one of Maxey or McCain is hurt because you don't want one of those guys playing 45 minutes, perfect. That's great. That's what he's here for, right? To be the emergency vet that you turn to. It's like, he can give us some minutes. I know he's going to give us a professional effort. He's going to play smart, blah, blah, blah. When you have two young guards that need to play 30 plus minutes, Kyle Lowry can't be playing 12 minutes while Jared McCain gets 22. Like that cannot happen. And I'm not making these things up. This happened in the last week. This is not, I'm just pulling numbers out of thin air. So it's a real shame that, because I don't want to pick on Lowry. Again, I agree with Derek. It's not his fault. It's the coach's fault, but it is what it is.
All right. Well, that's the 10, at least for right now. That's where we are. And he's on the back end of the 10, both he and Drummond on the back end of that 10. We want to say thanks to everybody for hanging out with us on the Monday. Let's show you quickly our schedule for the week, just to let everybody know. Here we are, Monday through Thursday, 3 p.m. Friday,
one game.
We got a game.
Off-season week.
We got a game Friday. I know it's like a preseason game, huh? We got a game on Friday with the Indiana Pacers, and that is the NBA Cup losers bracket game where the Sixers will play the Pacers on Friday, the Charlotte Hornets at Charlotte on Monday, and then they don't play a game again until Friday again against that Charlotte Hornets team back here in Philadelphia. So 3 games in 14 days for the 76ers, and that should also give them a little bit of rest and a lot of practice time. And they did not practice today, folks, as we were talking about it during the watch long and post game. They did not practice today, and maybe they will have
no practice tomorrow.
And no practice tomorrow. We do want to say, though, on the TV side, that if you are watching on the TV side, we want to say thank you. And if you want to continue to watch the show, head over to allphly.com for more of the show. All right, it's time for the World famous roll call. Let's get
Roll
to it.
call, baby.
Roll call time.
By the way, I don't
Yes.
think I saw my girl Winona in here today.
Nona's not in there?
And Winona was
Yes,
upset.
Val, where's Nona?
I need an APB. I heard she was at a meeting. Winona was upset with me in the Discord last night. I wasn't sure why, but so just sending out a
APB.
hello to Winona, even though I haven't seen her in here today. Just know we're thinking of you. Hope that meeting is not a bad one. It is Monday.
It is
obviously.
Monday.
Monday meetings. Not the best. We can
A lot
all
of days
speak
off
from
in December
experience.
for people too, so they try to squeeze these meetings
Oh, yeah,
in
it's-
there.
they're just
Holiday,
loading up.
yeah.
Thank you to everybody checking in with us today. Thank you to Bootzilla,
Boots!
to Eugene Ross,
What up, Gene?
to Martian Lynch, Aaron,
Hey,
Jess
Aaron.
with the blue heart,
The blue heart. That's the new heart. The blue
to
heart.
Darkness,
Turn the lights down. It's too bright in here. Sixers,
Igabini.
they're not worried about the lights anymore. They're just good.
Igabini hanging out here, Valos
Hey, Val.
in the building, Money Mar, Glenn A, Mom's grandchildren.
Hey, Mom.
Who else we got in here today? I think we saw Tom Jackson near the top of the show. You better love somebody.
To love somebody, love somebody.
K
love
Red
somebody.
hanging out.
Oh, Flyers.
We got Malk C10.
What up, Malk?
Cannoli.
Holy cannoli.
Mary Overfield.
Mary. Love
What's
it.
up, Mary? Who else we got? We got
Who else we
Brian
got?
Knight, Flyers 99, SB Cole.
SB. What up, SB?
I
See
think I'm
James
getting-
in there.
Keith B. Yeah, James was in here early. James Alexander,
Yep.
right? He
Mhm.
was in here early.
Mhm.
Devon shouted him out near the top
Keith
of the
B
show.
is in there. We need a new R&B album, Keith B.
We got Taj W.
What up, Taj?
All right, I think that's probably about enough.
Did you get
Jeannie is
K-Red?
also in here.
K-Red, yeah.
You're right? Okay.
Elaine Bruno hanging out.
What up,
Thank
Lane?
you to each and every one of you. We got Rich. We got Louis Shia or Shia. I'm not sure which. Walrus and Ed Wright.
Walrus. I love it.
Everybody,
Love Walrus.
thank you. As always, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon so you get notifications each and every time we go live.
That's what it sounds like.
Hit the thumbs up to help us with the algorithm, but also to say thank you to super producer Bree hanging out, making it work. As always, we'll be back at 3 o'clock tomorrow. We'll see you then.
See it.
We all silly like the mayor.